in person. And we will try to not have side chatter in the room too. So moving on to roll call. I am here, Vice Chair Ned Dorf.
Present.
Present. All right. Alder Mark Stoyer. Here. John Arndt.
Present.
Cox.
Unmute, present.
Corey Mim.
Present, I am logged out again, so I'm here though.
You're here physically, but not on Civic Clerk yet. Julia Nordyke.
Present.
Krista Kainanen.
Present.
I got the last name right this time. And Mark Walter. Present. All right, we are all here. Approval of the agenda for today's meeting, January 18th. Is there a motion to approve? So moved by Mark Stoyer. Is there a second? I'll second. The Marks with the first and second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, agenda approved. On to approval of the minutes from December 21st last year. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion by Ned. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by John. All those in favor, say aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, and the minutes are approved, and we are super excited to move on to the presentation here. Our consultant partner, Maddie from Slipstream, is going to give us an overview on the citywide comprehensive energy planning project. Thanks for joining us, Maddie.
Great, thanks, Seth. As you can hear, I'm sick, so I actually brought in my colleague, Dan Streit, who's going to give the overview, and I'll be here to provide support and answer questions, but I'm going to pass it over to Dan to lead this.
I'm just trying to adjust the volume on our end a little bit.
Well, remember that thing with the blue dot when you open it up? You can
Yeah.
adjust it up there.
Right here, mute down in the bottom left.
Oh, that's right, thank you.
The arrow, with the arrow. Right there,
All right.
bottom, on the sides. Then right
Oh.
There we go. That's neat.
Are we able to enable screen share for participants?
No,
That would be
I
that
am going to
microphone.
share the screen with your slides, Dan.
Ah, okay. Okay, perfect.
Microphone?
Yeah.
What's the mic?
Wouldn't that be our microphone and they could hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be ours.
It's nice to see it.
Yeah, so
All of that.
Okay, Dan, can you say something again? Just so I want to test the volume here.
Yes, I am right here. This is Dan Streit.
Maybe just like that.
is it on that box? That doesn't have power though.
I think we should.
Thanks for your patience, everybody.
Yeah, this is the joy of.
Technology.
Okay.
Right.
And I think I can do this. Can anybody see this? No, I mean the people in Zoom. Can you see the slides?
No.
No.
No,
No.
no.
I think you have to hit your shared screen.
Share screen.
Back in the Teams.
And where is that?
On the Zoom?
Yeah, or,
Yeah, right there.
Bottom right,
I didn't know if I had to do
Sure.
this.
yes, there you go, share screen. Mhm.
and then.
No, I don't want to share it with anybody.
Right,
Oh,
this is my screen. Advanced sharing option. No, hit that little arrow to the right of. Or did you already?
she did.
Maybe hit that once.
Oh, with this next.
No, that's not it.
You can
Okay,
share it all for this.
well, how do you share?
This is really difficult, you guys, and I apologize because this is only the second time we've been able to do this.
What about the more to the far right with the dots? No,
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Screen two.
It's okay, Melissa. It's kind of like a nostalgic feeling for 2020, you know?
yeah, I think you got that right now if you hit share.
Mhm.
Just see it now.
Hey, we see it.
All right.
Sweet.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay,
All right.
so Dan, when you want me to advance, just let me know, okay?
Certainly. Great. Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share an update with you about the energy planning process. Thank you also, a huge thank you to Melissa for all of her work in support of this project. So please go ahead and advance. This evening, we want to do 4 primary things. First, just recap the objectives for the project, talk about the tasks that have been outlined and our schedule for completing those, where we are right now as of January 2023, and then also discuss a few next steps for the planning process. Next slide. So to bring everybody up to speed just a bit, this is a planning process. It's been funded through a grant from the Wisconsin State Office of Energy Innovation. About a year ago, we worked to collaborate with the city, Green Bay Metro Transit, utility, and then also with input from Northern Wisconsin Technical College and UW Green Bay, the Sustainability Commission, as supporting partners on the project. I submitted the grant application in April, and then finally completed all of the steps to signing a contract so that we were able to kick off the project this past August. So at this point, we are well into the project, but it's still definitely in process, and rather than reporting back on completed work here. Next slide, please. I would also say that I'm not sure what the norms are within this commission. I'm certainly happy to respond to questions as we go, but if there's a preference or rules of order for which it would be better to do questions at the end, that's just fine too. So and I am going to apologize also. I'm sitting in a room here that has lighting controls, and I have a tendency to sit a little bit too still. So if you can see that the lights just turned off on me, that's what's going on. I'm not just intentionally sitting here in the dark. So back to the objectives. So the first objective is to, in support of the city's emissions reduction plan, to engage residents and businesses to understand their perceptions of the plan and get their input on how to achieve those goals. In addition to engaging community members and businesses, we want to establish a community-wide energy baseline over a 12-month period, and then identify, we mentioned each of the partners. So the city, Metro Transit, and the water utility, identify 10 to 15 strategies. So those might be building improvements, but they also might be other strategies for each of the partners to that they can prioritize as first steps towards meeting those energy saving and emissions reducing goals. And then for the city specifically, we have an objective of recommending at least 3, but up to 5 policies that the city could adopt in support of its plan. And then the plan itself will, another objective is to then come up with a community educational plan to look at continuing that community engagement. Next slide, please. So within each of the tasks, for the first one, the community outreach feedback, as you may be aware, there's a survey that was released, I believe it was last week, and that is, there's one survey targeted at residents, a second survey that's focused on City of Green Bay businesses, and to look at both ideas for how the city can achieve its climate goals, and then also to understand some of the current energy issues. Within the second, and I'm sorry, the virtual forums there, at the completion of the surveys, then there will be virtual forums. I think that either Maddie or Melissa could speak a little bit to those, I believe, to help understand ideas or key points that are raised within the surveys. Within task 2, compiling a baseline, looking at collecting that community-wide data from the utilities, compiling that data, and then also conducting building audits to identify specific energy saving opportunities within certain buildings, to develop the opportunity to support the goal and opportunity development, looking at energy efficiency, fleet, that's particularly relevant for Metro Transit, but each of the partners does have fleet vehicles, so we're looking at all of those. And then also looking at renewable energy opportunities. And then we talked about developing the policy recommendations and the educational toolkit. Then finally, the outcome will have a report. The report will provide general findings and strategies, but then we'll also have a separate chapter for each of the partners. We'll prepare a fact sheet and a webinar to communicate the findings.
Dan, there's a question.
Okay. Thank you. Let me pull up the
But she
chat
just has
here.
her hand raised. Go ahead. I don't know if I'm allowed to say go ahead, but
Thanks. I don't know either. I'm new to the group. So just a couple of clarifying questions for the baseline data for task 2. My first question is, how detailed or specific is that information going to be? So like what level of insight, I guess, will we get from that baseline data? And then my second question is, when we talk about baseline data, are we talking about energy use, like electricity use, fuel use, or are we going all the way to like greenhouse gas accounting and looking at greenhouse gas emissions resulting from that use?
I can answer some of these questions. Maddie's voice is, she has COVID. So Maddie, I don't know if you want to talk or if you'd like me to address some of the Krista's questions.
yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, so with the community-wide data, it is utility data, Krista. So we requested from Wisconsin Public Service community-wide data for the city of Green Bay for residential usage, for commercial usage, for industrial usage in those broad categories. It won't be anything specific, because that isn't allowable. But as far as baseline data for the city, for all the city buildings, every single city building, city hall, all the parks buildings, you name it, water utility, metro transit, the water filtration plant, we have all of the utility data for several years. And so we benchmark that. We have a baseline of our usage as a city. And then we've already done a greenhouse gas emissions for the city that was based on 2018 data. We did that previous to the start of this project.
Great, thank you. And I did see your chat, Maddie, as well, that the granularity is at the building and vehicle level. So thank you.
Okay, Danny,
unless-
going?
Okay, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we completed the contracting process and kicked off last August, worked on developing the surveys for the residents and the businesses, started the data collection. We have been putting together that baseline. I mentioned that the surveys were released earlier this month, and then in early mid-December, the building energy audits were completed, and we're in the process of identifying opportunities for buildings and fleet. So moving forward then, there's more to do on the opportunity analysis. As the survey closes, we will be getting into the virtual forums. And then once we have those in place, we'll also be able to move towards the policy and educational toolkits. Now, the project is initially going to be completed towards by the end of June. I believe that there's a request in progress for an extension to the project that would allow a bit more flexibility on that completion timeline. I don't know that that is finalized, but I think we have good reason to believe that it'll be approved. Next slide, please. Okay. And let's see, I'm not sure how much more there is to say about the community engagement piece. I did neglect to say earlier that the surveys are released and are available in both Spanish and English. Yeah, any questions on those?
I have one.
Okay.
So this is develop website. Is this something that might go on the city website as well? Or is it already there?
I can take that, Dan. I don't know how familiar you are with all of the details. So we didn't develop a separate website, but we have a web page within the city's website that's dedicated to the energy plan. And it's within the public works area. So if you click or scan the code for that will take you to the survey, but it'll take you to the whole area where we have the energy plan information laid out.
So will this be, somehow disseminated out to the community at large?
Well, there was a mailing that went out to, I believe, there was almost 900 in the mailer, Maddie, between 700 and 900, and that went to all of the neighborhoods in Green Bay with inactive neighborhood associations. So they don't have a current Facebook group. They don't meet regularly. They're just, they're inactive. And then we're working through.
Hey, Melissa, the
Yeah.
next slide lists all these. And
Okay.
I appreciate you and Dan keeping up with me being sick, but the next slide lists them all, which I think will be helpful.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
But yes, we have a whole outreach plan in place.
And what kind of questions or information more specifically, I guess, are you looking for, like ideas of how people are looking to conserve energy, like what they would buy into as far as what they might want to convert to, or
Like what
You
their
know?
current practices might be,
Mhm.
what types of policies they may support. It's not just based on their behaviors like within their households. So there's a variety of questions. First question is if, and they have to grade like what level of support, like 1 through 5. But even how supportive they are of the city's goals to get to 100% clean energy. So
Sure.
we start with that. That's sort of the beginning, is gauging the community support for the goal. And then asking more specific questions like on commuting behavior. Do you walk to work? Do you ever do carpool? Bike riding? There's a variety of questions that relate to not just city operations, but also questions that were more important that that transit wanted to learn about too, as far as potential ridership goes as well. So it takes about 10 to 12 minutes to do the survey.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, thank you, Melissa, that, looks to current attitudes, both on the city's goals, but also towards sustainability and energy more generally. And then, yeah, I think that one of the pieces we hope will come out are some good insights on what some of the more effective strategies might be that the city could implement in order to support community members in reducing energy use and reducing emissions. Next slide, please. Ways you can help. If you haven't done so already, please do complete the survey and encourage anybody else you know who is a Green Bay resident to do so as well. And then there's
I can talk to these, Dan. Yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing that Melissa and I are working on is having an in-person session at the Aging and Disabilities Resource Center to help residents fill out the survey in person. So we'll be in touch with more information as we have it, but if any of you are interested in volunteering at the event, if we get it set up, that'd be much appreciated. And then we also signed up for, on February 25th, there's a Brown County kind of Aldo Leopold event at the Brown County Central Library. And we signed up the Sustainability Commission in general with the goal of doing kind of the last push of outreach. It will close at the end of April or at the end of February at that event, and then also just giving you the opportunity to share additional information about what Sustainability Commission is doing. Go ahead, Julia.
Are you paying for promotion on social media sites? Because it's not very expensive.
We're not paying for promotion on social media. It is being posted on the city's social media through multiple departments twice a week. We have found in the past when we've promoted on social media that more bots get to it than anything else. And so we're trying to stay within kind of existing sources of outreach. But that's something we can consider if we're not getting enough responses. At this point, 100 residential responses. So we've gotten a pretty good number of people to respond just within the first few days.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready for the next slide.
Is that a new question, Krista? Okay,
Yeah,
go
just a
ahead.
quick question. What's the
Yeah.
business participation at?
Not good.
Okay.
It's not as good. So especially if any of you have When we say share with your network with businesses, if any of you have connections with businesses to help get the word out, we'd much appreciate that. We are working with City of Green Bay's outreach person with business districts and Chamber of Commerce, but so far we've, I think, only had a handful of those compared to the 300 residents. So when we say you can help, that's definitely a place, especially with businesses, if you have those connections.
And Krista, we have some pre-written blurbs that we can send you for your business connections as well, as long as they're businesses that are located within the city of Green Bay, just to so you don't have to dream up the language that you would put into an email. We've already done that.
That would be great. Thank you.
This
Go ahead.
slide that you should be on right now, Dan? We've already
Yes. Yep. I think we've covered a lot of this. I would just call out here that Melissa or Maddie, I'm not sure if you want to speak to the difference in the years for the baselines for of the 2018 versus doing the 2021, 2022 baseline for the government partners.
Yeah, I can describe that quickly. So when we talked with transit, we got the understanding from them that because of COVID, their 2019 numbers or 2018 numbers are not representative of what it will look like now or into the future. They don't expect the number of riders to bounce back to the numbers they saw in 2018 or 2019 like ever. So they were not a big fan of us using 2018 to evaluate basically opportunities for them moving forward. And so basically the 2018 will still serve as the baseline, but as we identify opportunities for each partner, we want it to be as up to date as possible, which is why we're using that 2021, 2022 baseline to evaluate any future opportunities that we identify against.
Thanks. And just a few things to call out. We have had really great help from an intern through UW Green Bay. So just some appreciation there. We are still waiting on working with WPS to access the community-wide energy data. Yeah, so just to call out those items. But other than that, I think we're ready for the next slide. So here's an example of some of the baseline energy data that we are collecting. Here are here's information for Metro Transit, and as noted, their focus is on their fleet, where a lot of their energy use is. So looking, we've established the gallons used, miles driven, and then ridership also. And then the bottom table there converts all of that into carbon dioxide emissions. This is some of the baseline data for, I believe, primarily municipal buildings. And the green bars are, solid bars are the actual energy use intensities. So that is kilobtu's per square foot of building space. And then on the bar on the right is median energy use intensity for that building type. So where the bar on the left is taller than the bar on the right, that suggests a building where more energy is being used than would be expected based on the building type. So you can see that the courthouse has a much higher EUI than would be expected. Similarly for fire stations 3 and 4. City Hall is actually performing a little bit better than would be expected based on the median EUI. So once again, this is an example of some of the baseline data that we're preparing. And that will be included in the plan. So looking back at the transit data, and this is looking comprehensively at both fleet emissions and at building related emissions, and the sources of emissions on a percentage basis there. And so you can tell that the vehicles are well over half of that total, those total emissions. And so it certainly makes sense to target reductions in emissions from fleet vehicles as a key strategy for reducing Metro Transit's overall emissions. Next slide, please. So this then looks at all three partners, and the size of the box indicates the relative amount of emissions compared in the context of emissions from all sources from all three partners. So you can tell that the water utility has a very large share of those overall emissions. You can see the breakdown from there. I would say that within the other category, there's a lot that's within there. All right, so for the opportunity analysis, like I said, we're looking at energy efficiency, fleet improvements, and as well as renewable energy. And then in progress, we've completed those building audits and starting to look at initial analysis for potential opportunities. And then, but there's a lot more to do and more depth to go into in that. Next slide. So the last task is the reporting. Will it'll establish the baseline. It's intended to be an internally facing report. Puts the baseline in terms of the energy use, the energy costs, and carbon implications. At how much that baseline can be changed on a percentage basis if the strategies that are identified within the opportunity analysis are implemented. And then since there are three partners, there will be the general section, and then also each of the partners will have a chapter specific to their objectives. Then there will be fact sheets that'll be produced that'll hit the highlights from the report and will be community facing. And then we mentioned that webinar earlier. Next slide, please. So that moves us on to next steps. So the survey, once again, helping with the promotion of that survey, also working on creating plans for the virtual forums that will be held after the survey closes at the end of February. And then continuing with the opportunity analysis, looking for cost-effective and high emissions impact strategies. And then certainly following up with this committee as is appropriate. So thank you for your patience with me as I've been trying to pinch hit a little bit here, but I'm happy to open it back up to questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, Corey.
Will the city be approving the plan at all, or is it really more of a report that we're providing? You know, like, is this something we're trying to get approved through city council to implement then? Okay,
Yeah, that would be the goal, is to get it approved by city council and then have it adopted into the comprehensive plan, or at least sections into the comprehensive plan
okay.
when they do the update. So
So would it go to a different committee after Sustainability Commission reviews, and then would it be like INS or?
It would be a variety because it really affects it, you know, it's water utility can take it to the water board, the Water Utility Commission. Transit has its own board. And all of the departments, all of the city buildings are part of this. So it's really, there's really no one committee. Finance would definitely be a committee that would be highly involved. So really, that's yet to be determined.
Okay.
All right, Krista?
So just want to quickly clarify, what's the level of detail? So, I know this probably isn't the right forum for this fully, but we actually had a meeting with the City of Green Bay's utility, our consulting group did. And they were asking for what seems like something very similar to what they're getting from this. They're looking for a detailed energy baseline with greenhouse gas implications. Are they getting that for like all of their buildings as part of this work?
What organization were you meeting with? The water utility?
Yeah,
They should be getting all of
Yeah.
this through this work.
okay. So maybe they just don't fully understand what they're getting from this.
Yeah, and
So,
I would say
know.
we've had a lot of, we don't actually have that level of detail from the water utility yet, and we've been asking them for it. So that's good to know that they're asking
I
for someone
think
else
they
to do it.
don't have that level of detail, and maybe
Got it.
that's why they're not sharing it, because
So, yeah.
they're asking us to help them get it.
Right. So that might
And
be where the
so-
disconnect is like
Yes.
through this
Okay.
process, they've realized that they don't have that, and we don't
Got it.
have like a ton of extra budget to help them get it. Um,
Okay,
so we're trying to help them in some ways, but in terms of like if you had to like help put sub meters in or get e-gauges or work with the utility in a lot of depth to separate all their accounts, that's not something we would necessarily have the capacity to do. So maybe
Got
they're
it.
trying to actually tie the two together.
I think
Um,
so. Okay, so then what would be the timeline for you to be able to incorporate that information if they could get it to you?
Yeah, I mean, we can incorporate it towards the end, the sooner the
Okay.
better, but I would say if it could be done by midsummer, that would be ideal. I don't know how long it will take you to do that, though. My understanding is the water utility, I mean, the accounts they did send us, the data is very messy. And I know John
Yeah.
has worked through this in the past as well, and I think he could only get a lump sum back in 2019 or 2020 when he was doing this. So it's great that they're asking for additional help on this. And maybe it would be worth just having a joint meeting at some point in time so we can make sure that they're all aligned together.
Yeah, it just happened to be overlap between the two groups, so I'm
Yeah.
glad I was able to clarify. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's helpful to know. I'll definitely follow up with, I don't know if you're working with Nancy, but that's our main
Yep.
contact.
Yep, it's
Follow up
Nancy.
with Nancy to make sure we're on the same page again.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Nick?
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation today. Melissa mentioned that we're getting residential data, we're getting industrial and business data. So I would assume we're also getting data for governmental buildings that are within the city limits, federal, state, county, and school district.
We
Is
won't
that correct as well?
data. No, we won't get specific data on the schools. The only data we specifically have is our own for city buildings, because that's the city's data. But we cannot request specific data for say, the Green Bay Public School System, unless the Green Bay Public Schools said, here, we're giving you access to all of our data. What we can do from WPS is request general, segmented sort of, so when I say industrial manufacturing, anybody that's making something, commercial, huge category of commercial accounts. So we won't get anything specific to businesses. What all we're asking for to have a community, like a true sense of how much energy everything within the confines of the boundaries of Green Bay uses. And then we can subtract all of the city data from that to get an idea of. But yeah, does that answer your question, Ed?
So all those governmental buildings would be rolled up into like the total
Correct,
data.
correct.
Yep. Yep, that's all I was wondering, I guess. But yeah, and thank you for explaining that. That wouldn't be segregated. So yeah, that I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great.
I'm just curious, like, with things like solar power, and I don't know if they tie into the normal grid and if that's being measured or if that's something you're including as a measurement for, I
We
don't know.
requested all of that from WPS.
So WPS would be the keeper of
Yeah. So
of
if you
solar as well.
If you have renewable energy and you're interconnected into the grid,
Yeah.
which. You have to have a contract, you have to have a utility interconnection agreement with your utility. So they know everybody who has solar or wind or, and that's just how it works.
Okay,
That's the law. So, yeah. So we've requested that sort of information, as well as, we've asked, Maddie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we also asked for, just a general count of how many people within the city of Green Bay do the voluntary, solar credits. You know how you can do your green program, where you don't actually have solar on your home, but you can buy a block of, say, 300 kilowatt hours a month, and that is sourced from renewable energy. So we've asked for that information as well.
Yeah, we did. And we are completely uncertain at this point of time how much information we'll actually get from WPS, but the goal is to get that level of granularity if we can. Melissa has been pinging them multiple times to try to get some additional data, so we will see.
Kristen?
What has been the holdup with WPS? Have they been like difficult to work with or resistant to sharing the data, or just bureaucratic slow?
I don't know if she.
I think that would be a different meeting, Krista, that we can talk
Oh,
about.
that's okay. Yeah. I was just curious.
Other questions, comments from either Zoom or in the room? Story?
Yeah, it was a great report. Being on council, we're definitely looking at these things and trying to get the information and research data together so that we can make good decisions on this. So kudos to you for that. Thanks.
All right, last call for questions, comments, concerns. Wonderful. Thank you, Maddie and Dan, for the presentation and for this project. This is super exciting. I know I've already shared it out far and wide, and folks are really excited to weigh in on this plan.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present and to work with you.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone.
Well, and before we move on to the next part of the agenda, same ask as our December meeting, but for all the members here to again share far and wide, come up with a list of friends, family, neighbors, personal, professional networks, and the deadline is February 28th, right, Melissa? All right, so yeah, let's get some great responses here. Moving on then to informational work group updates. So that pretty much covers the clean energy work group update. Other folks that have updates. Is that going to be during this, or is that a separate?
It's not a separate item.
Ned, did you have a dark sky update that you wanted to share? Now would be the time.
Yeah, I think I sent some notes to Seth and Melissa, on what Dave Hansen recommended for looking at the dark sky. I think it would be nice to connect with somebody in between who's maybe Mark, Walter, who's worked on this before, as far as how to make those notes into something that we can recommend to the commission to move on to another committee. But Dave gave some suggestions of things for us to look at, and I think it's probably good for us to just, hopefully Mark and I can connect in between this meeting and the next one to have something written up for the group. The other thing was well, Melissa, are you going to be talking about our meeting with Dan?
No,
No? Okay.
it's not on the agenda as far as like the draft policy, so I was just not going to bring that up until it was actually on the agenda as an item.
Okay. Then as far as pollinator work and healthy habitat work, that pesticide policy is being looked at internally still. So hopefully we will see it at the commission level at some point, maybe in the next couple months. I don't know for sure, but there's a lot of work being done. That's all I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you, Ned. Any questions for Ned? All right, and any other work group updates? In the room or the Zoom? All right, cool. Moving on then to marketing and outreach discussion led by Mark and Corey. Take it away.
Well, I'll start.
Yeah.
Melissa, Corey and I met about a week ago. And had a pretty spirited discussion on just a number of ideas out there. I can share a couple of things offhand. And these can be kept, recycled. It could be, these are just points of discussion. But some of the ideas we came up with, for example, were one, I had the Green Bay Sustainability display tables for meetings could use repurposed ash borer wood that was cut and with rain barrel supports. So we're talking about just a visual for various meetings that we would have. We'd have just a simple plank from the ash borer trees that were destroyed that would have to be taken down. It kind of ties in with the Parks Department, and then Corey could probably talk about that a little bit, about some of the furniture that was built from some of these trees. So I'll just kind of go through these and then Corey can chime in as well. I put down working with Leadership Green Bay on ideas and initiatives involving sustainability. We've had a few folks come before the INS committee and talk about some of the projects that they're working on, and these are young professionals in the city that are looking for ideas for projects, and so I think we have a pool of folks that would really jump on this kind of stuff. I know we're talking about the grid, but I've seen stories on television about interviewing folks who are attempting to get off the grid and using collected research data for further studies. Some of the things that they're doing to save. Working with various governments to connect existing hiking and biking trails. I'm in the process of trying to hook up with Village of Howard to hook up to the Mountain Bay Trail with our West Side Trail. But I think that's a quality of life issue, exercise, nature, etc. So I think it's important that we look to try to connect our trails, our hiking and biking trails. I know we talked about a brochure listing the list of commission accomplishments over time. Sponsoring dark sky and conservation core trails. Maybe there's some tours or talks or what have you. There's different things we could do with those groups. Organizing trail cleanups with youth groups, the Scouts, the Boys and Girls Club, getting the youth of America, youth of the city involved. Working with UW Green Bay environmental students on projects that can be performed by citizens and youth groups as well. And that one slide that we had in the report, they're talking about municipal garages, how much they take. One of the things I've worked on, and I don't know if it'll ever happen, but trying to combine municipal garages. We've got police, we've got fire, we've got DPW. There's a bunch of garages that may have a duplication of services, so maybe there's a chance that we can look at savings that way. So that's initially what I have, and I have some other ideas, but Corey, do you have some things to throw in?
Yeah, I know we talked a little bit about kind of the conversation that started months ago. I think it was June or something, where we looked at, just kind of pricing for materials for events. So like that Aldo Leopold event that we were planning to attend, maybe we want to have materials to pass out, like brochures and things. So how are we going to pay for those? So still kind of trying to figure out where we would get funding. And then two, I think we've mentioned this in the past, like, maybe the commission could have its own logo. And, kind of really just thinking maybe that whole, considering even like a work group category for marketing or something along those lines, as we update the work groups. I think we do that annually, or whatever. maybe whenever we need to add something new or change it. So thinking about that too, just, how can we sort of spread the word more? And yes, things like maybe partnering with the Green Bay Conservation Corps on events, or so that we're sort of sharing resources. And I think the Conservation Corps has a lot of the same goals, that the commission does. So I think it could be nice to sort of partner on some of those things and have somebody, within the commission or multiple people working with those groups. And so, yeah, I think, what else did we talk about? All sorts of things. Oh, the trails connections. I did want to mention Parks is working on that as well. So we are looking at, funding and all the logistics and things that go along with that. So that is something being talked about within Parks. It's a lot of money to make those. I think that West Side Trail connection to the Mountain Bay Trail is like a half a mile or something, but there's wetlands, and just the connection isn't going to be an easy one, so to speak. So we still are working on easements and things, and so slowly but surely we'll make that connection, hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, I think even like maybe somehow tying in, I like the idea with the connecting of the trails and things. So maybe there's a way we can sort of market that through the commission, and working with the planning department, who I know is always trying to get people to walk more and drive less, and so yeah, I think there's definitely more that could be done. I mean, I know we're all already putting in a lot doing this, what we are doing already, but I think, maybe some minimal steps could help improve what we're doing already. So
one of the other things we talked about too is, we're kind of piggybacking on the No Mow May, as far as, and I just threw this out, I'll share them with you. You can laugh, cry, or whatever. Okay. But for each month, I came up with a frame. Are you okay, Mark? He's holding his head.
I've known you way too long.
Are you guys ready? I'm gonna go through them. Anyway, so January through December. And I was looking up various things about saving and conserving and exercise and all that type of thing. So these are just ideas. You can like them or not. So January, I could have snow shoveling exercise for torso and thighs, January. I know.
Not this change.
It's not over yet. February would be with haste, stop food waste, February. March, saving with solar for temperate and polar, March. April, adopt a storm drain for spring rain, April. May, no more May. June, start in a butterfly garden June, or you could have monarchs rule with garden jewels June. July would be open a door with the Conservation Corps, July. August, slow go on the H2O, August, saving water. September would be plug a smart plug, September. I've read about smart plugs. There's a lot of good things with that. October, create a recycle center for owner and renter, October. November, do the bus or carpool when it's cool, November. December would be save on heating and cooling, no fooling, December. That's it.
They're fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I see some eyes rolling, that's fine.
Yeah.
And that'd be a lot of work to do every month, but I'm just saying, if you want to get into the fabric of the city of things, why not? Just throw it out there, you know, and these type of things, you might come up with some other ideas. You know, I tried with recycling, anything that, there's a lot of different variations here, but there might be some others that you could sneak in there as well. So that's my little poetry for the day.
I think that's a great idea, I mean, it also kind of lays out a framework, and maybe we don't start with there, but it gives us a calendar to look at, every month, if we have nothing else to talk about, hey, we've got one of those ideas somewhere in there to spark interest and maybe create community interest too.
I will type them up and give those to Melissa. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, we could sell a calendar as a fundraiser, and that answers the
You
question.
could be Mr. March.
Recycle the,
Yeah, I just
Next
trimmed all
one,
this
on
down.
the
with
next
this
text bench,
Next tricks.
you could model on the next.
I
That could go south.
Quick, instead of Santa.
Julia, you have your hand up, Mark side chatter.
Yes, sorry.
Thanks. I really enjoyed those monthly rhetoric there. That was quite awesome. That was awesome. Just thinking, you reminded me of the Green Bay leadership group. Today I offered to give one half of the presentation about how climate change is impacting our city for their environmental day. And so they'll be looking, Jody's also looking for someone to do the other half that's about the renewable energy and clean energy transition and what the areas doing. So I had suggested Melissa or Seth, you, since you're working on that green energy plan. But one thing, if they're coming with ideas, one thing the Sustainability Commission could do is we could have like a list of potential projects, like if we had a discussion about that in the future, and just so we have a list of projects that to give them every year even, and short list of things that they could work on from the Sustainability Commission.
Yep, that's great. That's a great idea.
Can I add to that?
And then
I was just.
sorry. Oh,
I could just jump in for a second. I know we have a list of Eagle Scout projects in parks as well. And I feel like some sustainability, maybe a list for Eagle Scout projects too, to go along with that could be good. That was something to think about.
Sure. That would be cool. Ned?
And then I'll just say one thing, Corey, if you do start a group about marketing and outreach, then I would like to be a part of that. So.
All right, Ned, I think you're next in stack.
Thanks. So any of these cool monthly ideas, I really liked Mark's idea of having a theme per month, and that's something that I can, you send it to me, I can put it up on our Facebook group or send it out, to other, but I do manage that, and I think that'd be kind of a fun thing to have a monthly theme or whatever, or maybe ask the community, can you think of another one? Can you come up with something else? Yeah, any of those cool ideas, send them my way.
Will do. Cool. Thanks, Ned. Good reminder to also send other articles or interesting things your way for the Facebook page, and to share and like and promote. Corey, did you want to put together like a work group and get volunteers today and set up a time to meet and start working on some of this?
I could, I am interested in being a part of the pollinator work group though. And so if somebody else were more interested in taking the lead, I would prefer that, but if not, I'll take the role, so.
I could help.
You'll help?
So the limit, Melissa, would be what, 4 people?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, no more than 4.
no more than 4 commission members, and then anybody in the community can also help with that too, if we know of folks that we would like to.
I'll work with you on that. Maybe a good.
Sign me up.
Sign.
Sounds like Julia's interested too.
Julia,
I would do it.
Marks and Corey.
Well, the marks.
Yeah, all right. Marxism over here. Cool, that's great. So, I mean,
Okay,
if y'all want to do that and you come back with a plan or more recommendations,
I mean, so I gotta talk to them.
very good. I think it's a great idea. And at one point I did speak to a small group of leadership, Green Bay. And I think having a list of actions would be really helpful. My one ask for them was in a couple months, I'll send you the climate survey, which I did, but that was really the only thing I could come up with. So they were hungry for more actions. Okay, so I really like that idea.
I think now, there's, in college, school, et cetera, there's a lot of theory that's thrown out there, but I think there are folks that like to see something applied.
Mhm.
They'd like to be able to apply, and I think some of this would help.
Mhm. I think our job is to make it really easy for people to take action on their values. Because everybody wants to do something and we can make it easy.
It's also a team leadership, which does an environmental day every year. Because I've spoken to both these groups. Probably every year for the last 5 or 6 years. But they're, team leadership is kind of neat because they are. Full of really creative ideas,
Hmm.
so sometimes that's a good group to connect with.
I noticed the survey age limitation is, you can take it if you're 13 and up. Could you share the survey with the coordinator of that group? All right. Yes, right there. Ned, your hand is up.
Thanks, I'm sorry, I neglected to mention that, I am in the middle of resetting the pollinator corridor working group and getting members for 2023 and setting some goals. And Corey agreed to be part of it and some other folks from the community. So if we do have any other commission members that are interested, obviously, like Melissa said, it would be a limit of 4, but otherwise we're gonna start meeting again, hopefully fairly soon. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on the outreach conversation right now?
Neighborhood associations, I presume, have been looked at in Green Bay for some of this or not?
I presented to them
Did
like
you?
the first year we started meeting, and then, so I guess that was 2019 already. So it would be good to circle back and,
I would think so, partly now because there are grants out there that
Yeah.
they can apply for, and there might be a project that might tie in with some of these things.
absolutely,
So I would consider that as well.
that would be good. And I'm in the process of helping restart the downtown neighborhood association, so if that gets off the ground.
We have some inactive groups in my district, and it's difficult because, they're not active.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't have a neighborhood association by area at all. So
you could start
We'll
one.
start one up,
Mhm.
stop by Will's
my
office.
spare time, yeah. I work with you on it.
Cool. All right, other thoughts? This is cool. Thanks, Corey, Mark, for bringing this up, and Mark and Julia for joining the newest work group. Moving on then, my favorite holiday, Earth Day, is on April 23rd.
Nope. April 22nd.
Uh-oh.
Oh, it's April 22nd.
Oh,
You
it's
can do that. Who knew that?
I looked it up. I saw it April 23rd.
I mean, really, it's Earth Week, so, I mean, Earth Months. that
What
can
is,
be in
what
the
is the
calendar.
day of the week is Saturday?
Oh.
Right, so I put this on the agenda to piggyback off of our previous discussion about, you know, maybe doing something every month to celebrate. And also just maybe some community engagement for the Sustainability Commission, but is there any interest from the group to participate in a community event for Earth Day? I use the word participate in instead of organizing one, because there are a lot of events already happening in the community for Earth Day. But if there's interest from the group, I can do some research to find out, you know, which ones might align with some of our goals. Is anyone interested in doing that as a?
I can throw something out.
Mhm.
Years ago, for about 5, 6 years in a row, people, when I worked at City Hall, we had a group of us that would go out on Earth Day and we did river cleanup. So we would just. And I'll tell you a quick side story. I was in a canoe with one of my coworkers and there was a big chunk of metal sticking out in the East River, and we thought, man, we gotta get that out of here. And we started pulling on it with a chain. It was a washing machine. And somebody on the shore was walking his dog and he said, what are you guys doing? I said, we're pulling a washing machine out of the water. And he said, leave that there. And I go, why? And he said, it's fish habitat. Anyway, you gotta be there. So we've done, you know, earth cleanup, you know, we cleaning the rivers, walking along the side and doing that. We did that for about 6, 7 years. And then we also did plantings. Where I think, I don't know if you can approach some groups that have that, but we would take a certain time of plant and we would plant them along the river or whatever. So you can piggyback with that as well. So I'd be up for that.
Well, Julia, your hands up.
Yeah, I just put in the chat, so the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance hosts a really big watershed cleanup every year. It's on May 6th this year. They used to do it on Earth Week, but they had to cancel 2 years and I think in a row because of weather. So they moved it back a little bit. But I know it's not Earth Week, but if we are gonna we could definitely host, like the Sustainability Commission and the city could host a site for that or cleanup at least. And I know a lot of other cleanups happen too, downtown. Sometimes they're organized too.
They've had trail cleanups too, right? So there's different things.
I know the Green Bay Conservation Corps is planning to partner with, I don't know, if partner is the right word, but work alongside the Fox River Watershed Alliance for that Earth Day cleanup. So we could maybe try to join in too to really make all of these organizations come together if that's something that's desired. But beyond that, I don't know. I think the Conservation Corps, sorry, the Green Bay Conservation Corps, was planning an event for Earth Day, so I'm not sure if that was the sole event that they were, because it's not actually happening on Earth Day. But I could find out, and maybe the commission would, if they're doing something else. Want
Nice
to
to
join that as
focus
well.
together maybe with that. I don't know.
Yeah,
You know, we'd be part of that. The Sustainability Commission would be part of that event.
right.
I could see doing that with another group.
Yeah.
I'd jump on that. I'd do it.
I'm absolutely down to
Okay.
do cleanups and everything. And we have Amy in the chat here. All right, good, noted. I'll also say too, my day job, Wisconsin Conservation Voters. We've taken a couple years off because of the pandemic, but on April 25th, we're hosting Conservation Lobby Day. In the past, we've had a bus with the Brown County Conservation Alliance, and we go down to Madison and we talk about clean water, clean energy, public lands, other priorities like that. I think one of the big focuses in the Capitol with our legislators, one of the focuses will be how state government can support local government. So if folks are interested in joining, I can follow up with information there. I think, you know, having citizens talk to their elected officials about priorities, especially being on a commission like this would be really impactful. So
April 25th.
April 25th.
What day of the week?
It's Tuesday. Yeah.
Tuesday? I'm with you.
Also, I guess one other event that's happening on the 25th here locally, it's called the Green Bay Conservation Partners Spring Roundtable. And it's a half-day event with networking at UW Green Bay. So it's during the day. Sorry, Ned and other people, but who's a day job, isn't it? But it's a regional conservation partnership that focuses on like lightning talks about the conservation projects in the region. Corey's presented at it before, and Melissa probably too. It's been on virtual for the last few years, but now it's back in person. So I can send out the information for that too as a save the date. I'll put that in the chat too, but that's a great event if you're able to attend. And it's like, yeah, a lot of the restoration people and the DNR and the Fish and Wildlife Service and researchers and like all about water quality projects and conservation projects in our region.
Great. Other ideas or events that are already happening?
Oh, busy day for recycling.
Yeah.
Presentations, I'm also presenting that week.
Cool. If we have no other thoughts on that, we can move on to the final informational bit here. Summary of approved text amendments from the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Code project.
Yeah, so I put a couple of attachments into your agenda packets, and this has already gone through a couple different commissions and approved by council. The ordinances, text amendments have been adopted, so this is really just more informational. I'm not going to go through the whole summary, but because the project is officially finalized, I thought it would be good to include these with your packets. One of the attachments was more of an outreach / marketing piece that Public Works and Planning put together to send out when we were soliciting public input for the code amendments. It just goes through what is green infrastructure, why did the city examine the codes for green infrastructure, and what some of the benefits are of green infrastructure, and the various chapters that were amended. And then the second page is a table, just a summary. It doesn't go in depth, but it's a summary of the primary amendments that were adopted. So I just, go through, I won't go through it, but chapter 16 and 42 deal with environment and stormwater management. So there was various amendments made, a lot of definitions were added for different types of green infrastructure. Permeable surfaces are now an acceptable, as long as they're approved through a stormwater plan, they will be exempt from the ERU calculations for stormwater. And then we also looked at the noxious weeds and maintenance of vegetation chapter, which is chapter 24, and that's where Plan Natural Landscapes is in. That was the very first code amendment that went through, and this commission was very involved with the review and the success of that. And then chapter 44 is the zoning code. And again, a lot of the landscaping standards were the biggest, sort of the biggest job of this whole project, with adding in green infrastructure, especially in our parking areas and in perimeter plantings, and then the plant materials and soils as well. So if anybody has any specific questions about this, I will do my best to answer these now. Otherwise, you can always ask me or email me separately. But I just wanted to sort of put a bow on the project.
Well, from a city standpoint, I'm speaking for myself and maybe some of the council, but we're very happy that this has come forward. This gives us something to look at, something to work on, something to utilize as a tool. And it's very well done and very appreciative for the efforts that you put into this. And others.
Yeah.
And I want to say, I think that this, at least this one pager informational is actually a great example of what we could do to market sustainability commission, not this exactly, but
But just
certainly
short, yeah.
the framework catches one's eye. It gets the information out there. It introduces people to some of the concepts we're talking about. I think it's a great way of getting information to people. That we can add to our sustainability commission list of accomplishments and marketing tools.
And we did talk about that in a way that felt like a brochure of some sort that we could list our accomplishments and the things, the links that are out there. It's very succinct, but we could put some really good things on there.
And to even have those presentable, like at events, you know, like the Aldo Leopold, like really big, like, hey, we helped start Normal May.
Right.
All the way, or what's the word?
Comments from the Zoom room, Ned?
Yeah, I just want to say I really like this sheet. I think it was a great idea to put the code sections in. You know, for us to be able to look things up pretty easily. And I really like seeing that in the plant material sections that we are promoting the use of Wisconsin native plants. That no less than 2/3 of proposed trees, 60% of proposed shrubs, you know, plants that are plants indigenous to Wisconsin. So I think that's a really good step forward, and I really appreciate Melissa for putting this together and getting some. Obviously, there's been some good work done internally. So thank you.
I was just gonna say Corey was heavily involved with this as well, especially the landscaping standards. So she really deserves a lot of thanks as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
All right. Other comments, questions? If I was on Zoom, I would have done the clapping emoji thing. Cool. All right, that brings us to the end of the meeting then. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, no. Well, all right, we'll give it to Ned. Is there a second? I'll second. All right, seconded by Mark Walter. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Hi.
Hi.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Zoom wave, IRL.
So, yeah. Ned, before you go, just at some point, we do need to talk about dark skies.